Humans had a tradition, a sacred rule, an ironclad principle of warfare. If the enemy showed up in giant, over-the-top warships, dressed in ridiculous uniforms, and started monologuing, they were to be mocked relentlessly. Admiral Zyrax of the Zorvath Dominion had expected fear. He had expected trembling voices, desperate attempts at diplomacy, and immediate surrender. What he got instead was the sound of laughter echoing across every human broadcast frequency. Is this real? Are we being invaded by a villain from a Saturday morning cartoon? One of their leaders said live on their planet-wide network. Did you guys model your ships after a rejected Sci-Fi script? Zyrax's secondary hearts drummed against his chest. He adjusted his stance and gestured to his comms officer to mute the transmission. This was not how this was supposed to go. The Zorvath Dominion had conquered 12 systems in the past century, each surrendering within minutes of first contact. Their navy was unmatched, their weapons capable of levelling entire cities with a single pulse of energy, their soldiers genetically engineered for war. The sight of a Zorvath dreadnought blotting out the sky was usually enough to make most species capitulate before a single shot was fired. Humanity, however, was laughing. Commander Zor A addressed his tactical officer. Perhaps they don't understand the gravity of their situation. Show them. The order was given, a demonstration strike. Nothing too catastrophic, just a city reduced to rubble to make a point. The weapons officer locked onto a sprawling metropolis on the northern continent and let loose a single kinetic round from orbit. A perfect strike, enough to vaporize several city blocks. There was silence for all of 2 seconds before the human broadcast resumed. "Oh no, not Detroit," someone howled in mock horror. "You saved us the trouble of demolishing it ourselves." Zyrax turned toward his officers. "What is Detroit?" he demanded. A lower-ranking Zorvath hesitated before answering. "Our intelligence suggests it is one of their population centers, but the reaction does not indicate distress." Indeed, the human response was not one of panic. Instead, more laughter followed, accompanied by images of what appeared to be a ruined cityscape before the attack, as if to suggest their bombardment had done no noticeable damage. Zyrax clenched his mandibles. "Fire again. Another target. A capital this time." A pulse of energy carved through the atmosphere, striking a governmental centre with pinpoint accuracy. Again, no screams of horror, no cries of despair. Instead, the broadcast continued with a tone that could only be described as unimpressed. "Wow, you really showed that empty government building. That'll teach us." Another voice chimed in. "Can we invoice them for the demolition fees? That was taxpayer money, you know." The Admiral's claws tapped against the armrest of his command chair. This was unnatural. Conquering a world followed a pattern. Show overwhelming force, establish dominance, force surrender. Yet these humans responded with mockery, as if they had seen this sort of thing before. "Perhaps a more direct approach is required," Zerx muttered. "Deploy ground forces. Occupy their centers of power." The order was given. Transport ships descended in coordinated strikes across key locations. Soldiers in gleaming armor, weapons at the ready, took position in major cities. They expected resistance, fear, some level of organization from their enemy. What they got was a scene so baffling, so alien to the Zorvath, that several troopers froze on the spot. Humans in brightly coloured clothing stood waiting, not with weapons, not with military formations, but with cameras. A man in a neon vest approached the nearest squad of Zorvath soldiers. "Hey fellas, you got a permit for this occupation." The lead trooper aimed his rifle. "This is a military operation. Stand down or be eliminated." Okay, I hear you," the man said, taking notes on a clipboard. "Just need to fill out some paperwork. Standard procedure, you know how it is. We got zoning laws. Now what's your business here?" Conquest, the trooper said, still trying to process what was happening. Gonna need specifics. The human scribbled something down. Planetary annexation, military occupation, cultural assimilation. All three, you are not in a position to negotiate. Listen, buddy, we got forms for this. The man pulled out a thick stack of paper. Now, you're going to need to file an official request for hostile takeover. Takes about 6 to 8 weeks for processing. One of the other troopers hesitated. Is this a delaying tactic? I wish. Bureaucracy is just like that. Meanwhile, in another sector, a squad of Zorth enforcers stormed into a building labelled Federal Reserve. They expected to find the economic heart of the planet, the vaults that dictated the financial flow of humanity. Instead, they found nothing but officers and confused clerks. "Where is your planetary treasury?" barked the Zorth officer. A man in a cheap suit adjusted his glasses. "You mean the gold?" "Oh, buddy, we got some bad news for you. We haven't backed our currency with gold in ages. It's all numbers on a screen now." The officer narrowed his eyes. "Then what is stopping your economy from collapsing?" "Confidence." The invasion force didn't know what to do with that answer. Back in orbit, Admiral Xerax watched in frustration as his troops sent in report after report of ineffective intimidation. Cities continued their business, workers clocked in for shifts, and humans casually discussed the invasion like it was a sporting event. "Sir," a communications officer spoke hesitantly, "we have an incoming transmission. The human leader wishes to speak." Xerax straightened. Finally, at last, they were ready to surrender. He signalled for the message to be displayed. A man in a simple suit sitting at a desk cluttered with coffee cups adjusted his tie. "Hey there, Zix, is it?" "Listen, we appreciate the whole scary Empire routine, but we got a lot going on right now. Budget season's coming up, the traffic situation is a mess, and frankly, we've had bigger problems than you. You guys aren't even in our top 5 existential threats." Xerax's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Do you not understand the power of the Zorvath Dominion? Your civilization is at our mercy." The human sipped his coffee. "Cool, so what's your plan? You stick around, you get taxed. You leave, we go back to our regular nonsense. Your move." Xerax slammed his clawed hand against his console. "This is not how invasions work." The human nodded. "Yeah, welcome to Earth." Xerax paced across the command deck, mandibles grinding as he watched the human leader's transmission cut out. The bridge crew remained silent, each officer glued to their stations, avoiding their admiral's gaze. The invasion was not going according to plan. No, it wasn't an invasion at all. It was a joke. And the Zorvath Dominion was the punchline. "Commander Rel," Xerax growled, eyes narrowing at his second-in-command. "Do we have any reports of resistance?" The commander hesitated before replying. "Minimal. A few of our patrols have reported civilians throwing objects at them, but no organised military pushback." "Throwing objects?" Xerax's mandibles clicked as he considered the absurdity of it. "What kind of objects?" Rel's expression remained carefully neutral. "Mostly food items, sir. One squad was struck repeatedly by what appears to be spherical fried meat. Another received injuries from high-speed cylindrical bread-based projectiles." Xerax exhaled sharply through his nasal vents. "They are fighting us with food?" "Yes, sir." Xerax clenched his claws, glancing at the tactical display of Earth. His fleet was still in position. His soldiers had established multiple footholds, and yet the humans continued to treat the occupation as an inconvenience rather than a conquest. "They do not fear us," Xerax muttered. "That is the problem." "Sir," another officer interjected, "we have located their military installations. Shall we commence planetary suppression measures?" Xerax's mandibles tightened. "Yes. Execute precision strikes, disable their weaponry, force their hand. If they will not take us seriously, We will give them reason to. Orders were relayed, and within minutes, Zorth cannons hummed to life, targeting human bases across the planet. The weapons fired, unleashing controlled destruction upon the most strategic points of Earth's defences. Silence filled the bridge as the tactical feed updated. One by one, reports came in. Military bases hit, fortifications obliterated, weapon silos reduced to craters. Zyrax waited. Any moment now, humanity's forces would mobilize. Their leaders would reach out, pleading for negotiations. They would finally recognize the dominance of the Zorth. The screen flickered to life. A human news anchor sat behind a desk, shaking his head with what could only be described as amused disappointment. Well, folks, it looks like our uninvited guests have finally decided to throw a tantrum. Military installations have been hit, but given how outdated most of those sites were, the damage is honestly kind of helpful. The screen cut to an interview with an Earth military official, an older man with a thick moustache and crossed arms. Yeah, those bases? We've been trying to decommission them for years, but red tape kept getting in the way. Now that they're gone, maybe Congress will approve the budget for modern replacements. Zyrax's claws dug into the metal of his armrest. Sir, Rel said cautiously, we may have miscalculated their response. Zyrax turned, eyes burning. Then what do you suggest? We need to take a human leader hostage, Rel said. If their leaders will not negotiate, then we must force their hand. A low growl rumbled from Zyrax's throat. Fine, select a high-ranking political figure and dispatch an extraction squad. Make it clear that resistance will not be tolerated. An elite strike team was deployed, descending upon a secure government facility in one of the largest human cities. The extraction proceeded smoothly, with Zorth soldiers infiltrating the compound and neutralizing the security personnel. Within minutes, the target was secured and transported to the flagship. Zyrax stormed into the interrogation chamber where the human was seated in restraints. The captive was an older man in a well-tailored suit. Unfazed by his situation, he calmly adjusted his cufflinks as Zyrax entered. Let's get this over with, the man said. I've got a meeting in an hour. Zyrax loomed over him. You are in no position to dictate your schedule, human. The man shrugged. You think this is the first time I've been in a high-stakes negotiation? Zyrax scowled. You do not seem to grasp the situation. Your planet is under our control. Your people are defenseless. I hold the power here. The human smirked. Then why am I still talking? Zyrax's mandibles twitched. You will instruct your government to surrender, or there will be consequences. The human leaned back. You want my advice? If you're going to run an occupation, you'd better have a plan for handling bureaucracy, infrastructure, and all the other stuff that keeps civilization running. Otherwise, you're going to be drowning in logistical nightmares. Zyrax's fist clenched. I did not bring you here for political advice. The man raised an eyebrow. Then you kidnapped the wrong guy. Zyrax exhaled sharply. Enough. If your government does not comply, we will make an example of you. The human simply chuckled. Good luck with that. My approval ratings are in the gutter. If anything, my disappearance might actually make my poll numbers go up. Zyrax glared at him, then turned to Rel. How do we proceed? Rel hesitated. Sir, I do not think this is working. Zyrax let out a growl of frustration. No matter what they did, humanity refused to be intimidated. They treated their invasion as an inconvenience, a joke, something to be dealt with, like an annoying paperwork problem. For the first time in his long career, Admiral Zyrax felt something he had never known before: doubt. Zyrax sat motionless in his command chair, eyes locked on the tactical display. The plan was unraveling, piece by piece. The Zorvath Dominion's standard invasion tactics, fear, overwhelming force, strategic decapitation, were failing against a species that simply refused to take them seriously. A low chime interrupted his thoughts. "Sir," Rel said carefully, "we've intercepted another transmission from the humans. It's, unusual. Put it through." The screen flickered to life, revealing a brightly coloured stage. A human sat at a desk, grinning at a live audience. Laughter echoed in the background as he gestured wildly. "Ladies and gentlemen, our invaders have decided to stick around. Give them a big round of applause." More laughter. "Now, I gotta ask, Zyrax, buddy, do you even want this planet? Because honestly, we don't always want it ourselves." Zyrax's claw dug into the armrest. "What is the purpose of this broadcast?" Rel looked unsure. "Their species appears to use humour as a means of communication. We do not fully understand its function." "Then let's make them understand," Force Xerx growled. "Deploy more troops, enact martial law, impose curfews. Make it clear that we are their rulers now." The order was executed. Troops doubled, patrols increased. Military walkers stomped through city streets. Aerial gunships hovered over population centres. The human response? A music festival featuring a hit song called "Welcome to the Occupation," complete with fireworks and street parties beneath the warships. Syra stood before the main display, mandibles clicking furiously. "They have no regard for authority, no respect for power. This is madness," Sir R said again, looking paler than usual. "The troops are struggling to maintain control." "Struggling against what?" "Customer service complaints," SX stared. "Explain." "The troops have been ordered to take control of supply chains, but human civilians are lining up to demand permits, receipts, and proper taxation paperwork. The occupation force is now entangled in what humans call bureaucracy." Zyrax turned to another officer. "How are our logistical efforts proceeding?" "Poorly, sir. The humans insist we comply with environmental regulations before deploying infrastructure. They filed official grievances about our troop transports exceeding noise ordinances." Xerx inhaled deeply. "Then we must escalate. We will take what we need. No more negotiations." Minutes later, a squad stormed into a human warehouse, taking control of essential goods. The humans simply nodded, took out clipboards and started filling out paperwork. "All right," said the human in charge. "That'll be 6 forms per unit seized. You'll need a requisition permit for goods transported outside planetary jurisdiction. Oh, and if you're keeping the goods, you're on the hook for import tariffs." The Zorth officer blinked. "We are conquering you." The human shrugged. "That doesn't exempt you from taxation." Xerx watched the reports come in, tension rising. The occupation was crumbling, not because of resistance, but because of something worse: compliance. "Sirrah," said grimly, "our forces are getting buried in regulations. Our officers are being forced to attend tax seminars. Our soldiers are locked in legal arbitration over property zoning disputes. We don't understand these laws, but the humans are holding us accountable anyway." Zyrax knew the truth. They had already lost. Humanity wasn't fighting back because it didn't need to. It had a weapon more powerful than any fleet, more insidious than any counter-offensive: its own relentless bureaucracy. For the first time in Zorth history, an invasion was called off, not due to defeat in battle, but because the logistics of occupation were simply too unbearable to sustain. A retreat order was issued. The mighty Zorvath Dominion withdrew, abandoning Earth, their conquest reduced to a galactic joke. As the last of the warships left orbit, the humans sent one final message. It was the same broadcast host, grinning ear to ear. "Well, folks, that's the end of the invasion. We'd like to thank our visitors for their time, but if they ever want to try again, they'd better bring lawyers next time." Laughter, applause. A banner reading "Better Luck Next War" unfurled over a human government building. Zira sat motionless in his command chair. The bridge was silent. Sir R finally asked, Xerax exhaled slowly. "Never speak of this again.